Hi, and welcome to Canterbury Cottage. If you're like me and don't like to spend a lot of money on seasonal decor, then you're in the right spot. Because in today's video, I'm going to show you how I created fall decor that looks like it came from a pricey store, when in reality it cost me absolutely nothing, because I only used things that I already had around the house. So if free sounds good to you, let's get started. Here's an idea for making use of some of your ugly old fake flowers that you were never going to use in a floral arrangement anyway. Take the flowers apart, getting rid of any plastic pieces. Then find some small ball-shaped objects, such as the woven balls that you find in potpourri. Wrap an individual piece of fabric from your flower around the end of a pencil. Add a bit of hot glue and stick it to your ball. Since my balls were woven, I stuck the flowers in the openings. Repeat this process until your ball is completely covered in flowers, and then use scissors to trim up the ends. After trimming, I could see that I needed to add a few more flowers, but I was out of the original flowers that I had used, so I just grabbed some others that were in a similar color. Because I didn't want to throw away the leaves that were on the flower stems, I decided to use them on my next ball. And since that turned out pretty cute, I decided to use a sack of autumn leaves on the third ball. I glued the end of a piece of twine into the center of each of the three balls and then tied the three pieces of twine together. Then I ripped 3 strips of some fabric that I had and tied a rustic bow above each ball. Now let's use an old wooden salad bowl to create a modern-looking candle. To begin, I cleaned up the outside of the bowl with a little lemon oil, which conditions the wood and helps to hide nicks and scratches. Then I found 2 old candles. One was stained and one was missing the wick, and I put them in an oven-safe bowl and set my oven at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I tied a couple pieces of wick to a straw and laid it across the top of the bowl. I often reuse the wicks from old candles that I've melted down. I added some fragrance oil to the melted wax and poured it into the bowl, leaving a little space at the top of the bowl. Once the wax had hardened, I added some dried florals to the top and then poured a little more wax over the top of those. Once your wax solidifies, if you have any imperfections in the surface, you can smooth them out by running a heat gun over the top of your candle. I don't know about you, but I love to read. However, I am so busy all day that I really struggle to find the time to read as much as I would like. I've tried audiobooks, but my mind wanders off, and then I'm wasting time rewinding, trying to figure out exactly when I stop paying attention. Well, recently I've come across an alternative that is working for me, and that is the Blinkist app. Blinkist allows me to understand the key ideas from nonfiction books and podcasts in just around 15 minutes. Let me show you how it works. The app will suggest books that you might like, or you can search by title, author, or topic. Blinkist has over 5,500 titles to choose from, including all my favorite books by Gretchen Rubin, the author of The Happiness Project. Once you've selected a book, you have the option of listening to the audio recording or reading it, which I prefer to do in the evening. There's also a feature called Blinkist Connect, where you can share your account completely free with any friend or family member of your choosing. If you think you'd like to give Blinkist a try, click on the description box where you'll find a link for a 7-day free trial and a promo code for 25% off the annual premium. Here's another idea for making use of your old candles and making them look like primitive hand-dipped candles. Add a little bit of crayon to your melted wax to achieve your desired color, and then spoon the wax over your existing candle. The wax will get thick and chunky as it cools off, so you may want to return the pan to the oven for a while, unless you like really rustic-looking candles. When you're done, put your dishes in the freezer for 30 minutes and the wax will pop right off. For the next project, you'll need a few empty soda cans. To begin, I used a can opener to remove the top tab section of the can. You should probably wear gloves because the metal can be sharp. Then I just used a regular pair of scissors to cut down the side of the can. Then I cut off both the bottom of the can and the top rim. Then I was left with a rectangle of metal, which I ran along the side of my work table to straighten out. To create a pattern, I taped a fake leaf to my sheet of metal and then cut around it. You could trace around it if you prefer. I used the same leaf over and over again. To create veins in the leaves, I folded them in half and then used a small screwdriver to emboss other veins on the back of the leaf. I spray painted both sides of the metal leaves with some gold metallic spray paint. Because real branches often break in storage, I thought about gluing the metal leaves to some faux stems, but ultimately I just like the look of real stems better. Since I just attached the leaves with hot glue, I'll probably pop them off at the end of the season and just save the metal leaves for next year. I don't know about you, but over the past few years, I have acquired a number of house-shaped blocks and frames. I thought they might make cute decor if I could add a small vase in place of a chimney. I started by drilling a small hole straight down into the roof. Once I had that starter hole, then I drilled a larger hole using a spade drill bit. For the house-shaped frame, I covered the inside with a piece of Dollar Tree corkboard and then printed out a couple autumn images, which I tacked inside. For the house-shaped block, I printed out another autumn image and decoupaged it to the back of the house by applying Mod Podge both to the block and to the back of the image, and then adhering the image to the house and smoothing out the wrinkles. Once the Mod Podge was dry, I trimmed off the excess paper and applied a top coat of Mod Podge. Then I applied some hot glue in the hole that I had drilled in the roof and inserted a small glass jar from Dollar Tree. Then I inserted some small florals to look like smoke coming out the chimney. If you like old rusty things like me, then you're going to like this next project. To create rust on some old tin cans and a bread pan that I had, I sat them in a disposable container in my garage and covered them with toilet bowl cleaner. A couple times a day, I would rinse them off in water and then reapply the toilet bowl cleaner. I just reused the cleaner that was already in my disposable container. In just a few days, you'll have some really rusty containers. I like to spray mine with a clear top coat before I use them in any projects. I decided to attach the rusty bread pan to a scrap piece of wood from my garage. I made a stencil on my Cricut machine using vinyl from the Dollar Tree. I applied some black chalk paint using a sponge dauber and let the paint dry for about 20 minutes, and then I peeled off the vinyl. I drilled 2 small holes in the bread pan and then attached it to the bottom of the board using 2 small screws. Once I was sure that the paint was completely dry, I sanded over it a bit to give it a distressed look, and then I applied a top coat of some clear wax. I added a used piece of styrofoam inside the bread pan, and then I added skewer sticks to the bottom of some pumpkins that I already had in my stash so that I could stick them into the styrofoam. I added a few tall stems to fill in the space between the words and the bread pan, and then I filled in around the pumpkins with leaves and Spanish moss. Now let's decorate those rusty tin cans. First, I sprayed on a clear top coat. To make labels for the cans, I taped a piece of regular tissue paper to a piece of cardstock. Then I printed out some autumn-themed vintage labels in sizes to fit on the side of my cans. I cut out the labels, applied Mod Podge to the side of each can, and then carefully adhered the piece of tissue paper into the Mod Podge, applying another coat of Mod Podge over the top and carefully smoothing out any wrinkles. The labels will be just subtly apparent on the sides of the cans, appearing as if they have faded over time or been rusted over. As a finishing touch, I ripped some strips of fabric to create a bow that I tied around the top of each can. For the next project, you can use a pillow that you already have, or make one from some scrap fabric. I'm using an old bedspread. I folded my fabric in half and then wrote the word fall across the front of the fabric using a Sharpie marker. I found a roll of trim left over from a project that I did years ago that I began hot gluing to the fabric. I just used a little hot glue at a time, going over the letters that I had created with my Sharpie marker. Use good quality hot glue sticks like Gorilla Glue, and that trim will not come loose from the fabric. When I was sewing, I made sure that the word fall stayed centered on the front of my pillow. I didn't really like how my F looked, So I glued a little flower on to conceal it. For this project, I used a metal shelf that was left over from one of those cheap garage shelving units. I wanted it to look old, like it had been painted several times, so first I painted it black, and then I brushed on some white chalk paint. For this shelf, I wanted to create an extra large image transfer. So I opened up the image in the Print to Size app and reversed the image, and then I printed out one page at a time, carefully moving the image over to fill up the page after each image was printed. I cut off the margins and then arranged the images on my metal shelf. Then I applied Mod Podge on the image and laid it face down on the metal shelf, smoothing out any wrinkles. I let it dry overnight, and then the next day I moistened the paper and began rubbing it off with my fingers. Once the top layer of paper was rubbed off, I used some sandpaper to distress the edges of the metal shelf. At this point, I felt there wasn't enough contrast between the background and the lettering, and so I went ahead and painted the metal shelf with some black chalk paint. When the black paint was dry, I distressed it with some sandpaper, and then I sprayed the entire sign with a clear top coat. It may have been a mistake to paint the sign black. I don't know. You'll have to let me know. Which background color do you prefer, the black or the white? For the next project, I found an old tray that I had previously spray painted black but never used. I'm currently a little obsessed with the Modern Masters Rust Effect paint, so I decided to use it on this tray. First, I gave the tray 2 coats of the rusty orange primer. When the primer was dry, I applied 2 separate coats of the iron paint. And when the iron paint was dry, I applied Mod Podge to the center of the tray and then printed out a vintage image of pears using the tissue paper technique. Once the tissue paper was adhered to the center of the tray, I went over the top with another coat of Mod Podge, and then I carefully tore off the extra paper around the edges. Then I sprayed the tray 2 separate times with the rust activator. Be sure to seal your tray if you're going to use it for food. If you want more ideas for using junk you have around the house, here's another video you may like.